I guess nobody's in yet, but we don't know that until we open it up, right, Robert? Hello, everybody. Anybody there? Are we by ourselves? I know Gma, she had a long day today, and she's having to go on her phone and be in the car in the parking lot because she's just leaving a school right now. So hopefully she can get settled. She's a way better MC than I am, and she's obviously the doctor. All I do is coach people, so to speak, and she can do just about anything. I call her the Michael Jordan of after school programming, but it's probably more like the Michael Jordan of anything that has to do with education. You there, Gma?
Oh, I am. So let me see if I can give you a picture. Hang on. I've said I was going to join the stream. Can you see me?
No, but even if we don't, we can hear you, so that's good. Now we can't even hear you. Yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I mean, there's nobody else here, right? Yeah. Well, let's get started. Ask the first question. Okay. You want to go first, Gma, or you want me to go?
With parents is understanding that they really are important in a child's life. Because with a parent, the child is learning from them and they spend far more time with them than they do with you. And so, what we want to do is honor the parent. And we want to work with them in such a way that we're on the same page, rowing in the same direction together. And I think that if we do that as adults who work with kids, as part of the school day or as part of after school, that we realize that what we're doing is providing opportunities to work together with parents. So I think that that's foundational in your thinking. It's a mindset piece. And
Yeah.
I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, we appreciate your dedication, Gma. I know you've had a rough day, been with clients all day. I'm sure you're beat up and tired and all that, and now you're in the parking lot. But I think that just will tell everybody what we're about is that we get the job done for kids no matter what the situation is. I've trained people in the middle of the alley before in 20-degree weather, right? It's like whatever needs to happen. But to get to the question itself, as everybody knows or will soon to know, I guess, I'm just a very systemic person, and I have a lot of plugins that I've created over the years, or that me and Gma have created, or the doctor and I have created over the years. And then if we don't have something that makes sense, then we'll borrow it, right, or whatever the case may be. But to me, when I think about relationships of any kind, and I had said a couple weeks ago, to me it's about time, care, and belief. I remember when I was posing that question to myself, trying to build a relationship with Jesus. I was like, well, how do you do that? And so I went back to my wife of almost 40 years now, and I said, well, let's see. I did time. What did that look like? Well, obviously, if you're trying to do that with Jesus, you spend time in the Bible, in Bible study, and you can witness, and you can go to church and Sunday or Sabbath school, or witness or whatever. You're trying to get a date or trying to impress your girl or however you want to say that. Then you're going to spend time on the phone or different things of that nature. So just spending time with people. It's like I say, I'm not the cup of tea for everybody, right? But for some people, I will be. I'll be exactly what they need. So time's a big deal. And then the caring part is simple in my mind, that you just continue to work with them and work with the parents or whoever it is you're building relationships with, and you care about them without enabling. right? We don't want to do stuff, especially for youth, but parents as well, if they can do it themselves, right? We want to teach them to fish. We don't want to give them fish, so to speak. And then the last one is belief, and um, I always say that one's really simple. Um, if I'm still around, that means I believe. If I'm not, then I don't. It's like the leaders will ask me. Gma, you and I do a lot of leadership training with some of the best
Right.
in the world. And one of the questions is, how do I know if I'm a good leader? I say, well, turn around and look behind you. If the people following you, you're probably a pretty good leader. So those are the
Right.
the main things. And now with technology, you can spend time with people. It doesn't have to be like this. It doesn't have to be face to face or through a Zoom or whatever. You can text, you can email, you can DM, you can do all types of that kind of stuff. So communication is also a key. The other thing, and the last two things I'll say is there's two cheats when you want to build a relationship. So if you don't have the time to do it and you want to do something right away, find out what they're great at and then connect them with that. And so we have a story about a custodian that was at one of our elementaries,
Mm.
and he wasn't the nicest custodian in the world. Well, we found out that he could sing like an angel. So we went up to him, and matter of fact, it was me, and I said, "Hey, I heard you can sing like an angel." And he's like, "What do you mean, little grumpy, whatever?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I go, "Well, we're getting ready to have a spaghetti dinner in 2 weeks where all the parents are going to be there. We'd like for you to sing the national anthem and one other song of your choice." Oh my goodness, man, this guy, we got him involved, whatever we wanted from that point forward. And so get people involved, find out what they're good at, and get them involved. And the second cheat is not a great cheat, especially if you're in after school or in today's economy, I guess, for anybody, but you can purchase something for them. So we had a very grumpy secretary for the superintendent, and she was just grumpy, man. She didn't want to do anything for us. So we found out that she loved plants, and she had this certain kind of plant. This was 20 years ago, so I don't remember the plant itself. We went and bought her a plant. Oh my goodness, it was just like the custodian running a parallel. Whatever we wanted from that point forward, we were able to get. So time, care, and belief is the best way to do it, and longevity. But if you don't have those times, then you can use those two cheats.
So I'm just going to say ditto. That's exactly right. That's exactly what we need to do and to be intentional about it. So
Yeah,
thanks for that. So
and I
I'm
love, I
wondering,
love
Robert,
that
if,
word
oh,
too. As you know, that's my favorite word in the dictionary is
yep,
intentionality, right? One more
right.
thing I would like to say, another story. So when I first started teaching, I don't know, I lose track of time, but 35 years, however long it's been, I had special day kids, and I had 16 of them. And so I had talked to my mom, and she said, "Well, you need to build relationships." I go, "How do I do that?" She said, "Well, go ahead and praise their kids." And so I called up these 16 special day kids' parents, and they said to me, "What did they do this time?" I'm like, "Oh, well, they did this great thing and this wonderful thing." And they're like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Oh, I was just calling to let you know what a great job that your
Yeah.
kid was doing and this, and this." And I was very specific. So we don't like to do gross and gratuitous praise around here. So I don't remember what it was, 35 years ago or whatever. But, I did that. I did that with every parent. So then when I had to contact them on something that maybe was negative, they were already on board with me. They're like, "Hey, how you doing, coach? How you doing?" Or they called me Z,
Yeah.
or whatever. "How you doing, coach?" "Oh, I'm doing great." "Hey, sorry, I got a little bit of bad news." "Oh, what happened?" They're still all upbeat and whatever because I contacted them several times before, giving them a praise about their child, and apparently I had seventh and eighth graders. Apparently, they never got praised by any teachers, which isn't the best in the world. So I want to throw that out there as well.
Absolutely agree 100%. Praise first before you criticize. Praise in public often and then do the other in private and when only you need to. So thanks for that. I think that's really true. So Robert, do we have another question?
Yes, my next question would be, what are effective communication strategies for engaging parents?
Okay, I'm going to start with that, Brett, then I'm going to kick that to you. I think that effective communication strategies, the very best one is to do it live, whether that's live via phone or live when they come and pick up their child or live when you ask them to come in and talk to you. But live matters. And because of that, the reason live matters so much is that we are very, very reliant on reading body language and facial expressions and hearing the tone that people say. I've had people say to me, so and so sent me an email and they were yelling at me. Well, and how do you know that? Well, that's how you read into it. And that's why this personal contact, when you make that phone call and they can hear your voice, and if they can see you also, that's the best. They are going to be able to understand that you have the best interest of their child at heart. And I think that that's the very first best way. The other thing I would say is that it needs to be often. Don't just communicate once every 4 weeks. Communicate every time you have the opportunity. Even if you send them a quick text or leave them a voice message or shoot an email that just says, hey, this is the cool thing your kid did today. Because every parent wants their child to do well. And it feels good when somebody else says, wow, your kid was amazing. Now, you can also use things like Parent Square, which is a communication system that your schools have. You can use the backpack mail and hope something gets home to them. But I do believe that the very best ways are to do it via phone, uh, face to face when you're actually talking to them. And then the third best way would be via text, because that's coming directly from you. So, Brett,
Yeah,
what would you like to add to that?
well, I want to ditto that. I like the multi-channel approach, and what I try to do is what you just said, right? So as you well know, within our system, we have five different mediums that we can communicate, and that's going to be live, which is the first thing, and that what we try to do the most, as you just said. But we also now have video, audio, what we call synthesized, which is fun too, because they're used to getting those or written, and so we say synthesized is basically just like a fancy video, like an AI video, or like, they have it to where it's on the whiteboard or it's a comic strip or something like that. And so, sometimes when they get those snail mail messages in the backpack, so to speak, that, they don't read them or whatever the case may be. But if you get like some little guy riding on a bicycle or it's a comic strip, they're like, well, this is different. I better pay attention. So I really like the multi-channel approach. And also I think too that when we talk about communication, that it's not just about what we're saying, it's how are we receiving back as well. And I think active listening, right, where you're shaking your head, oh, I
Yep.
agree, I understand, so on and so forth, so that we're really doing some active engagement in the listening department too. Last I checked, God gave us what? One of these and two of these. And if you're listening on a podcast, I just pointed one at my mouth and two at my ears, so to speak, right? And so I really like that. And the other thing is, too, we have to be sensitive, if that's the right word, to all the different learning styles as well. We do it with kids. Are they the kinesthetic? Are they the audio, auditory? Are they the visual? Are they, what are they? Well, last I checked, the little kids grow up to be parents, and they, in the same boat with that. So for me, I have a what I call an echoic ear. That's my number one way, man. If I can hear it, I could be doing 20 different things, whatever, not even paying attention to the TV. My wife's all in, and she'll go, "What they say?" And I'll tell her exactly what they said because that is my number one, style of choice, so to speak.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And everybody doesn't learn the same way. And we have to remember that. We need to go to them in a way that will be meaningful to them rather than just a way that's meaningful to us. So, yeah, communication is huge. And, I don't know about you, Brett, but I can honestly say this. I've never had anybody say to me, I am so sick and tired of being communicated with. People don't say that. They say, I wish you'd tell me more. They don't say, please stop.
They
So we
tell me
need to
to
remember that.
stop. They say quit. They say quit fire hosing me, and I'm like, I just wanted to make sure that we got the message across.
Exactly. But I think they probably appreciate that more than not knowing, right? So we need to bear that in mind. We need to communicate regularly with our families. So Robert, what else is on the docket?
Definitely. The next question would be, how do I handle difficult conversation with parents?
Oh, wow. You know, I think one of the things that needs to happen is for you to really, really, really understand you. If I understand who I am and the words that somebody may say that will trigger a reaction from me rather than a response, then I need to be very aware of that. A lot of times, I think that people don't understand that there is a difference between a reaction and a response. So there's a stimulus, somebody says something. If I react, I don't think about it, I just blurt right back out. If I respond, I take a few deep breaths, I think about what I'm going to say, and then I try and say it in a constructive way that I'm in charge of so that I can be proud 3 days from now that I said it the way I did. And so I think that it's really important that you understand you because there will be things that people can say to you that will put you in orbit in a hurry. If somebody says to you, well, you don't even care about my kids, and yet you know how desperately you care, you may immediately launch into how to prove to them that you care about them. And that may be the last thing they need to hear at that point. So if it's difficult for you, it's probably difficult for them as well. And some people when it's difficult clam up. They say nothing. They just swallow everything and then they feel horrible for days after. Other people go on the attack. And so, depending on which sort of difficult the parent is, you need to be prepared for that. And you need to know what will trigger you. So, if silence is what triggers you, then be prepared for that. If being loud and pushy is what triggers you, then be prepared for that. So that would be my advice when having a difficult conversation is to start by knowing yourself and then make your point and then stick to it and don't deviate from it.
Yeah, and sure self awareness, what we call sure self awareness, has come up twice now, right? Know thyself, right? And so
Yeah.
Dr. Gma here, or Dr. Zandis, she created a whole curriculum on this, about 120 hours. And so that's come up a couple times. So I'll just bring that up. That is, it's a course, and the first 20 to 30 hours is what we call sure self awareness. Do you really know yourself? Because a lot of people don't. They don't understand what triggers them or what excites them or whatever. So we've done a whole course on that. And like I said, I call her the Michael Jordan of, well, technically anything that has to do with education, but especially when it comes to curriculum. And then we have the second part of that is core competencies, which are different things of, how do you reverse engineer? How do you critically think? How do you problem solve? Different things like that, that no matter what you do in life, these things will be helpful for you. And then we have what we call either back basics or what we call mainstay mechanics. All these things that we've created, or probably 80 or 90% of them that we've created, accountability formulas, the patterns of change. It goes on and on. We have a bunch of them over the last 30 plus years. And then we have two systems that go with that course. And one we used to call it an individual system, which is mindset, get organized around that mindset, solution showcase, or what we call Nike-ness now. Just do it. Do whatever you're saying you're going to do. And then we collect data around that. And people always ask, well, what kind of data? I go, I don't know what's important to you. Collect that kind of data, right? And you can do that informally and formally. And then we thoughtfully advance. And then we also have the five big areas of life, which we say are spiritual, religious, and then there's family, friends, health, physical, and then we have personal, social, and then your career, right? And so a whole course has been built around that, but it starts with sheer self-awareness and having an understanding of that. I also like what you said, doctor, or mom, or G-mom. We have a bunch of nicknames around here that people react out of emotion, right?
Hmm.
And if you take that deep breath, or you center yourself because you know that you may be a reactor in a lot of ways. But what we don't want to, or what we want to do is we want to respond out of intellect. We don't want to react out of emotion, right?
Right.
Because that's never
Right.
going to go well. The other thing is that's a little bit more tangible. I like to get them seated, right? If you're both standing up, it just can escalate. There's something about, like she was saying, when you take a deep breath, right? And so I'll even say that with them and mirror that with them. I say, hey, listen, I want to really hear what you have to say. And I'll listen no matter how you deliver it. You can yell and scream and spit on me or whatever, and I'm still going to listen. But it would be far better for both me and you and everybody around us if we could just let's just take a deep breath, let's sit down, and then usually I'll have like a water. I'll offer that because like in sales, when I used to do sales training, where do you try to get them? Try to get them at the kitchen table or the dining room table because that's what you do with family. That's what Gma and I do every week. We're either at her house or our house, and we're at the dining table or the
Yep.
kitchen table where you eat, where you're supping, where you're doing those things, and that just really starts to relax everything down. You can't always get there because sometimes they're so riled up, they even forgot what they were riled up about. But I find getting them seated is there, and then saying, you know, I want to listen to what you have to say, and if what you say makes sense, then we'll make corrective action for it. Now we may disagree with you and say, I'm sorry that you see it that way. We don't see it that way. That's not our philosophy. And then we can broken record them. Usually after three times of the broken record, they get it. Like, okay, they're not going away, so to speak, or whatever the case may be. And then my famous saying is prevention versus intervention. If you have a good relationship with them to begin with, they're probably not going to get all riled up at you from the jump. Now, you may get in the conversation and you may say something that riles them up because that happens, if you have brothers or sisters or siblings or mom or dad or whatever, we can always say things, unfortunately, that trigger somebody else, whether it's intentional or not, so to speak. So I just think that there's kind of a mindset piece there and some real tangible things to be able to de-escalate the situation.
I would agree that all of that makes such good sense and is so important because parents, the one thing that you have in common with every parent is their child. And you need to keep that in mind. We both care about this kid. You may care about them in a different way than I do, but we both care about them. And I think that's important to hang on to.
You okay
Okay.
there?
No, yep. There was a boom of some sort, so I had to look around.
I thought somebody knocked
But
on the
it's
door or something. They're
nope,
saying, hey, I want to
wasn't
get in on
anything.
the podcast.
Absolutely. No, they didn't. Okay. So, Robert, what's the next question? What's up?
There's one on Twitch. I don't know if you guys can see the question right there.
It says,
I
I can read it to you. It says, what is a strategy you have used in the past to earn parents or caregiver trust? And thank you.
All right. So, there are, if you've ever read the book, The Speed of Trust, they identify 13 trust behaviors. But the very first one, which I think is very important if you're going to build trust with parents, is to talk straight. You need to be transparent, which is also one of those trust behaviors, but you need to talk straight. You need to let them know actually what happened, what you saw, what you heard, not your opinion. Your opinion isn't what they need to hear. They need to draw their own conclusion about what occurred. So if you're going to build trust with them, you need to talk straight and say, this is what I saw, this is what I heard. Another thing you can say is, I know that you care a great deal about respect, and so do I, but I'm not quite sure that Susie feels as strongly about it as you and I. Here's what I've seen. Do you think we can work together to find a way to help Susie? Because parents do care about that. They do care that their child's respectful and responsible and is safe. And you need to know which one of those three, which all lead to the same result, their parent is. And then you're going to start with that common ground. We both care about this, and let's move forward that way. But you've got to talk straight to them, and they will be making assumptions on their own because they make meaning of the things you say. And it may be exactly what you meant, and it may not be anywhere close. So you want to be sure that you're talking straight and that they understand what you're saying to move forward. So that would be the one of the most important things I think you can do to build trust with families and parents.
Yeah, and I'll go back to kind of the first question and, time, care, and belief. To me, the caring part builds trust. So I have this pet peeve of mine, especially when we're dealing with the either middle managers or the elite, what we call the elite executives, the top level leaders. And I say, do you guys carry a task and a to-do list? And everybody says, oh yeah, I do. And I'm like, I'll bet you don't carry it correctly. So we usually have a little wager, a buck, or lunch or something. And so what we've defined is that within all the systems that we've created and all the curriculum and all the plugins and back basics and all whatever you want to call that is, look, a a to-do list is your what you have to do for others, right? And then a task list is what somebody's going to do for you. So in this case, I don't miss. I could ask my mom, I could ask Robert, I can bring my wife in here, anybody else. The reason I don't miss is very simple. I'm very well organized with the task and the to-do list. So do I want to get up when a parent asks me to do something and go write it on a post-it note? No, I don't if I'm sitting down. Do I want to transfer that post-it note to my whiteboard where it's in my face all the time? No, I do not. Do I want to carry this task and to-do list around? Yes, because I like checking things off, so to speak, right? The computer's ruined us, so to speak. But in the end, if you can carry a true task and a to-do list and you're getting things done for people, again, without enabling them, right? You don't need to own all the monkeys, but if it's something that makes sense for you to own, you own it, you get it done for them, and you communicate. And if you own it and you say yes, let your yes be yes and your no be no, and you decide that that really needs to be a no, then you communicate or renegotiate. And also, I like to put time frames and deadlines on it. Yes, I'll have that done for you, Mister or Mrs. Such and such, within a 24-hour period. And then what do we say? What we're going to do is we're going to under promise and over deliver. So if I say 24 hours, that means I'm going to get it done in 8 hours. If I say 72 hours, I'm going to get it done within 24 to 48 hours. And I'm not going to miss because I'm going to be organized in a way to not miss because I know that's part of building the trust with the parents and being able to, our caregiver, and that's where it really starts. And about the second or third time that you prove that you're a man or a woman of your word, then they know every time they don't have to worry about it. You're going to get things done. And then what are they thinking when they don't need something? They're saying, this guy or this gal is a get it done type person with my child too when I'm not around. Because this is the behavior that they exhibit on a regular basis towards me. And I don't think, and I could tell that they're not just doing this for a show for the parents because I watch them when they're doing with the kids. They do the same thing with the kids as well. And so I think keeping that congruency, you are who you are, and that's built off of a lot of habits over a long period of time. I'm sure that my mom would tell you that I wasn't probably really good at cleaning my room when I was supposed to all the time. But I learned that habit over time. And if you ask my wife, I clean the room pretty good now, right? So it's just building habits and habits of trust and that caring for people in a way that's not enabling.
I agree, 100%. So, Robert, what else is up?
Yes, our next question will be how can I involve parents in expanded learning activities?
Ooh, can I take that one, Brett, first? Or do you want to? Okay, I can't hear you, so you must be on mute.
I said, well, doctor, you've been taking them all first anyway. You go right ahead.
Okay, so one of the things I think is the coolest thing I've ever seen when it comes to engaging parents is to have a parent night that starts, let's say that your program runs until 5:30. So you're going to invite parents to come at 4:30, and you will have worked with the children or the youth to help them be able to explain to their parent what activity that they're going to share with them, what they're going to have the parent do. Maybe it's a showcase, what we're going to demonstrate and show you. We learn to dance, so come and join us, and we're going to teach you how to do that. But you invite the parent, and they come early, not to pick their child up and escape to home, but to actually stay with the child and learn from the child. And what that does is it puts money in the bank, so to speak, for that child. Because as a parent, your kid does things that you don't like. It's just the way it is. And if you can see them in a different light and you can see them leading an activity and engaged with you in such a way, then what you're going to decide is, wow, I didn't realize my kid had that in him. And so not only are you sharing in their after school experience and in what they're doing and what they're learning, you are learning something more about them, which will allow you to move even further ahead with them as things go on. So that's one of my favorites is to schedule, like maybe you do it every other month, and you schedule just an hour for parents to come in and learn from their kids and participate with their kids. And so they can actually feel what it feels like to be in your expanded learning and experience it so that it's firsthand and it's not just a guess. So that's one of my favorite ways to do that.
Yeah, and I do the same thing, but I start from day one. So I say inch by inch is a cinch, mile by mile takes a while. And so what I'll do is when they come in, I'll say, hey, would you turn around and be the greeter for the next 30 seconds? And so, right, so just like we would do with the children or the youth, what we would do is we don't just give them 50 things to do all at once. We say, hey, you're going to be the classroom monitor, you're going to be the ball monitor, you're going to be the greeter, you're going to be the eraser cleaner. They probably don't do that anymore, but you're going to be the chalk monitor. They probably don't do that anymore either. But you get the point, right? And so then what we do is it becomes a common thing that everybody has to help. Every parent has to come in, and then we start talking to them about. After that, we say, hey, we're also looking for this, and this. A few minutes during the week. And then I love what she said, what Gma said about the culminating activity at the end. But they're already there and they're already engaged with kids and parents. And so you're building that familiar type atmosphere from the jump, right? Right from the beginning, which really makes things great. And then, like I had said earlier too, find out what people are great at. I mean, it's amazing what people can do.
Yep.
I remember when I was getting married, I told my wife, I said, I only have two requests. One, that you walk down the whatever they call the aisle to the Rocky theme. 'Cause I like the Rockies. Da, 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 da. And she said no. She gave me the Kimbe and the tempo. She said, I'm not doing that. And I said, and I want my mom to sing at the wedding. And she looked at me like I was crazy. And she didn't know my mom could sing. Well, my mom could sing like an angel, right? So when she would go to church and sing, everybody would listen and look at her and forget about everybody else. Well, my wife didn't know her in that capacity. And so my wife said that she was in the back putting her makeup on or whatever. And the opening song my mom did, and Susan starts bawling. She's like, who's that? And she looked out and she's like, oh my goodness, that's my mother or my mother-in-law or future mother-in-law at the time. So people have talents galore, right? I mean, I can go right. My mom calls it spitting in my hands. I can do a little bit of breakdancing or popping or whatever. You wouldn't think some big fat guy would be able to do that, but I have talents as well. So find out what people's talents are, but it doesn't have to start that way. That you can build up to that, to the crescendo, so to speak, in the end.
One of the greatest parents I had came and would cook with the kids, right? And she would make homemade tortillas that were to die for, right? And everybody wanted to be around when she was there to cook because it was exceptional. And she loved it. She loved sharing that with kids, and it was great all the way around. So you're right. Find out what they're good at. Maybe it's crochet, maybe it's knitting, maybe it's painting, maybe it's drama, maybe it's taekwondo, maybe it's you don't know. And you want to engage them in that way so that they are a part. And then their child can be proud of them too. Not only do they get to be proud of their child gets to say, that's my mom, that's my dad. And that is good for everybody.
Well, think about the long-term effects, because who my mom's talking about, I know 100%. Her name was Rachel, and she could
Yep.
cook like nobody's business. And as you could tell, I've eaten a few tortillas of hers over the days, but she taught us too. So it wasn't like she was just, giving us fish. She taught my mom how to make those tortillas and the beans. And if you've taken, ever tasted authentic Mexican, homemade beans, it's just a
They're to
different
die
type of
for.
world. So, you never know. We call it the pebble in the water effect. You don't know where you throw out a pebble and where the ripples in the water will go. And I remember one time I was I think she was like second or third in command, behind my mom and myself. And this was much later in life after we quit working together. And I took her to breakfast, and her own child, right, who was like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. And we were walking out of the breakfast place, and it just dawned on me. I go, hey, I could have had a small effect on that little guy's life. And she looked at me in tears and she said, you've had the ginormous, profound effect. And I may have talked about this. Sometimes I get my Alzheimer's moments. I may have talked about this a couple weeks ago, but we don't think like that. But it doesn't have to always be us as the teacher or as the parent. We don't know. It could be anybody that can teach somebody. I gave a kid out here, a pastor's kid, the other day. They were knocking door to door, and as real estate people, and I was teaching the kids stuff. So I gave him $100. His dad, we become pretty good friends now. His dad was like, man, that made such a difference for him, right? It taught him about
Hmm.
money. How do you invest versus save? What do you invest in? Blah blah blah. So you don't know. It's the little interactions along the way that truly make up amazing things that you may never know about until, I guess, till we all go to heaven. Then maybe we'll know.
Yeah, I do want to share one story. You know how when you go to the car wash, you look out and watch your car getting washed, which is really kind of confusing to me, but we do that. And I was standing at the car wash looking out the window, and the next thing I know, I am embraced in a hug. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, who is this? What is this? And I turned and I looked, and it was a young man. And I could tell that he recognized me, but I didn't recognize him. And he said, do you know who I am? And I said, not really. Sorry. And I said, but give me a hint. Well, once he told me his name, I remembered him and I remembered his family. And I asked him about what he was doing now and all that. And he had just gotten his MBA and he had a great job and he was working this job. And I said, wow, that's awesome. That is just great that you were able to do that for yourself. And he said, well, I'm doing that because of you. And I'm thinking, because of me? What are you talking about? And he said, do you remember when we did our musical in sixth grade? And I'm thinking, I did that every year, but okay. I said, yes. And he said, well, do you remember what you said to me? And I'm thinking, no. And I said, no, what did I say? He said, you told me when I told you I didn't have a costume, you said, that's okay, we'll work it out. And then you found me a costume. And I'm thinking, that made the difference in your life? I mean, I would have done that for anybody. I wasn't trying to impact your life forever. And I said, "Yes." And he said, "What that meant to me was that I mattered. And if I mattered, I could do anything." And that's what I've done. So you do not know what tiny, small, insignificant thing you will say or do with a parent or with a child or with a colleague or with anybody else that they can come back 20 years later and say, because of this, I learned this and I was able to make something and make my dreams come true. So just don't underestimate the small stuff. It's really important. And small stuff to a parent can mean just as much as small stuff to a kid. So, Robert, prompt us on.
Yes. Our next question will be, how do I balance professional boundaries with parents' relationships?
Okay, Brett, I'm going to let you take that one first since you said I was taking him first.
Well, first of all, that word balance really bothers me because I don't believe that that's the case in life. And people like to talk about balance, and I'll get some hate mail because I'm saying this, but we talked about those 5 areas, right? And so we talked about spiritual, religious, and then family, friends, health, physical, and then we have the personal, social, and then ultimately what we call candid career, your career and material. And so to me, it's more like a harmony, or I don't know music, I know sports and the Bible, but I think it's called a harmony. So if you think about an orchestra and you think about it,
Mhm.
the flutes aren't always playing at a 10 and the drums and everybody else until maybe the crescendo at the end. So sometimes you may have to play at the 10, to get everybody going at the highest level, but that's not how it works. And so that's balance. Everybody's at a 10. That's a balance. But nobody can sustain that. And so I think that there's ebbs and flows, so to speak, within that, like a graphic equalizer. Sometimes you want a little bit more bass, the flutes, or I guess flutes aren't bass, but the tubas or the whatever, I don't know music, but the drums, you want it to be boom, boom, boom. And then other times you might want a little bit of treble. And not to put my mom's business out there, but I do a lot of candid career stuff. I've always been that way since I was 8. I had 3 paper routes. When I was teaching, I was also coaching. I'd get there, 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning, not get home till 7 or 8 or 9 at night. So I'd be coaching both teams, whatever. This is how I've always been, right? And so candid career was, it was up there at that 10 level almost all the time. But when my mom got sick and she was in the hospital, I quit all those other things and I went to family and friends and I sat and just watched her for 10 or 12 or however long until they kicked me out of that hospital and watched her and made sure that they didn't mess nothing up. Right. And I was, I was actually better reading the charts than the doctors and the nurses because they'd be like, okay, well, we're going to, I go, no, you're not. That lady just gave her that. Right. Like, no, we're not doing that. So that was my 10 at the time, and everything else became a 0. Well, I prayed a lot, so maybe my spiritual religious was up there as well. So I think that that's the first thing that when we talk about boundaries and we talk about just balance and how that works and whatever. I think it's okay at certain times in your life to be up there at that high level, as the flutes need to be, or the trumpets sometimes, or the drums, or whatever. And unfortunately, in today's world, we have to be up in a lot of different areas, so to speak. But the other thing is that in regards to just boundaries, period, I think that's the big overall view. But I think it starts from the beginning, right? So I used to do what they call bagging with the middle school kids because they loved it. Nowadays you probably shouldn't do that so much, but your mama this, your mama that, and it was a way for me to connect with them at levels because and not every teacher can get away with that, and not every adult can get away. So I'm not suggesting that you do it, but within my personality, I used to be able to trash talk them and they trash talk me. But what would happen is sometimes they would get overboard and they'd say a cuss word or something, and I would give them that look. And I was like, we don't do that. Now you're going overboard. So if you want to continue this with me, which I know you enjoy, you can't take it too far. And so I think that the boundaries are set from the beginning. And if you set those agreements, whether it's actual formal agreements or norms, or whether it's that you can give them a look and they can understand the boundaries. And I think it's the same thing with the parents as well, right? They want to come in and high five and do all that's great. I think that's awesome, but they can also take it too far. Hey, do you want to go out and have a drink? I'll be like, no, I don't do that. Or, when you're working as a principal or a site director or even as a parent, right? You have to understand what those boundaries are. So I think that you can set them, but not forget them as the old saying goes. I think you have to set them, and then you have to revisit them, from time to time to let them know that, hey, I can be friendly without being your friend, right? That goes overboard, so to speak, right? I can be friendly, but that doesn't mean that we're going to be friends and go hang out, whatever. Now, other times, who knows? It's a connection. I remember when my mom and I first opened the after school program, we brought in all the site directors, and two of them got married, and that was okay too, right? And so they
Yeah.
were introduced there, whatever. So look, I mean, we're in the people business. It's very fluid. This isn't a black and white situation. It's so great. That's why I try to do as many things black and white as possible with systems and structures and processes and procedures. Because in the human being business, uh, especially in regard to boundaries, they're tough, right? And that could be with somebody you've been with, like me and my wife, for 40 something years now, or my mom and I who've been, around each other for 50, half a dozen years, or whether it's Robert and I who've known each other for 7 or 8 or 9 years, but have been around each other a lot more over the last year. We stop to set the boundaries because sometimes people will go overboard and you have to set that straight.
Absolutely. And I think that you need to, I really liked what you said about I can be friendly without being your best friend. It doesn't mean that I'm going to go hang out with you, but I will always be friendly because I care about you and I want what's best for you. But I think you have to be able to draw the line and say, we are friendly, but we are not best friends. We're not going to spend New Year's Eve together. We're not going to do those things, but I will always care about you, want to hear from you, understand where you're coming from. And so I really, really liked the comment about being friendly without having to be your best friend. And I think that that's a very important boundary to say. I do want to add one other thing. If you are out in the community, you need to be very aware that everybody's listening to what you have to say. So if you make a statement about a parent, and you may not even say the parent's name, or you might, somebody's going to hear that and that's going to get back to them. And it's like the game of telephone. What they heard you say and what you really said and what you meant and all of that is going to get all mixed around. So I think that you need to be careful when you are out and about, especially if you're in the neighborhood that you're working in. Now, if you're in Los Angeles, obviously, if you're on one side of LA and to compared to the other, no one's going to know that. But I would always be cognizant of that and set boundaries about what I allowed myself to say in a public format, in a public place, that I would not want to get back to somebody because maybe I'm saying it in frustration. And so that would be another part of boundaries on myself about what I would say
Yeah, and I
in
want
front
to
of
piggyback
others.
on that. We had a teacher when I was at the middle school, and he lived in the community. And
Mm,
with the middle schoolers, what happened was he went to like the local 7-Eleven or whatever, and he was buying beer. And he wasn't even a drinker. It was just like a special occasion. He was going to have some friends over. I don't remember what it was. And he saw one of his kids there. And not to say that alcohol is good or bad if you do it in moderation, but he did not like that. So he said from that point forward,
hmm.
that anything that was going to be outside the realm of, normal buying, in my case, baby Ruth's, right, or whatever the case may be, he would go to somewhere outside of the community to purchase alcohol or whatever. And I thought that's admirable, right? Like, and that made
Right.
sense. So he made a mistake, and he said, "Yeah, I just it didn't feel good to me that we're telling the kids no." And it's true, right? But it's okay if you want to have a drink. I'm not a big drinker, but if that's what you want to do on the weekends, cool. As long as you do it responsibly and don't drive and get out of control, and so be it. But I really like that, and I think when you're within the community, or you're a public figure, you got to kind of be
Right.
looking around and kind of knowing your surroundings and establish boundaries maybe outside of where you normally would want to go or roll, so to speak.
Agreed, for sure. So, Robert, is there another question?
Yes, our next question is how can I use newsletters to improve parent communication?
Okay. The way you can make a newsletter to improve communication is have the kids do the newsletter. Kids are very, very capable. One of the schools that we work at, it's not a newspaper, but it's a form of news. The kids make a podcast every week, and then the school day runs the podcast the following Monday morning. And what the kids are talking about are the events that are going to happen in the upcoming week. And they determine what the content is, they determine what the pictures are going to be. They lay out this whole podcast and they communicate. Well, that podcast would be great to upload in some way and share with parents, because what they would get to hear is from a kid's perspective what's going on here that's important. We also have third graders who decided they were going to make a newsletter. They saw a little flyer at a particular store and they thought we could do that. And so they got together and they made a committee of 6 kids and they figured out how to make a newsletter and they publish it every month for their classroom. Well, that means far more to people than an adult created newsletter. So if I were going to do a newsletter for parents, and I do believe you ought to do that, and we're going to send it home once a month, I would be engaging kids in creating that newsletter so that parents could hear from their kid and the other kids in the program about what was important to them and what was coming up. So that's how I would use a newsletter.
Yeah, I like that. That would be my first response is get the youth involved. The other thing that we used to do that was very effective is we would do a parent spotlight per newsletter. And so,
Hmm.
because we were at middle school, they were quick, right? And we could do it in clubs and whatever. So we would do a weekly one, not even just monthly. And we would have a parent. And, at first I had to help to create the protocol and the things they could ask. And then a picture, right? A picture speaks 1,000 words. So once they got going on it, they would have their 5 or 7 different sections, but one of them would be a parent spotlight. And so again, what's happening is you're continuing to do things to create that familiar type atmosphere, and that's a big deal because as I always tell people, I say, look, stuff's going to go south. So do you think when it goes
Yep.
south that you would rather have somebody real tight with you and gets it and understands and is going to have your back? Or if you don't build those relationships through time, care, and belief and the two cheats, they're not going to have your back because they don't even know who your back is, so to speak, right?
Right.
So I think that it's really critically important. The other thing with newsletters, so we believe that the best teacher in the history of the world was Jesus Christ. And if that's the case, how did he talk? Well, he talked in parables. So Gma and I have expanded that to what we call touch points. And that's going to be parables, stories, metaphors, quotes, different things of that nature, right? And so we always wanted to put something like that in because, when you're just reading the newsletter, or I was talking to this pastor I was telling you about that I met the other day, and he's got a great sermon, but it's like an hour long. And I asked him, I said, how much of that do you think they retain, let alone implement? And he goes, well, maybe 5 to 10% of retention, and maybe less than that. And I said, that's right. But if we talk in touch points and then we do a reflection on the back end, and that was another thing that we would do in the newsletter for communication, because we didn't just want to communicate. We didn't feel like this was a one-way street. We wanted them to reflect and to think on it, and how would that get them involved for the next go around, whether that was a spaghetti dinner or whatever it was. So we tried to be very, going back to my favorite word in the whole dictionary, intentionality. We tried to be very intentional that it wasn't just a one trick pony that we're just trying to get this information out. No, we were very thorough and deep in what we were trying to ultimately accomplish there.
Couldn't agree more. Okay, Robert, I think we have time for one more question.
Yes, we do. Last question would be: what role does feedback play in improving programs? In improving programs.
Feedback from all of your stakeholders is important. You have many stakeholders in an expanded learning program. You have the kids themselves, you have the staff, you have the school day folks, you have administrators, you have the community, and you have parents. Because parents are the ones who hear what their kids have to say. Even though when you ask a kid at the end of the day, what did you do? They usually will tell you nothing, right? But they also will then overhear what their child has to say to another child. And so they may be picking up on information that you don't have, that you're not getting directly from kids. And so when you talk to parents about what works for them, what feedback do you have? What would you like more of? What did you like? What did you dislike? What are you undecided about? Or what did you like and what do you want more of? No matter how you say that, you're going to get feedback that's going to allow you to make decisions that will be in the best interest of everyone. So I'm the actually where I am tonight and working on a training, they just got through making some profound changes in their program because of the parent input. The parent said, "We really like this, but this isn't working for us." And so they took that to heart and said, "Oh, we'd not thought about it that way. We'd not thought about how that played out for you. So let's talk about what we can do to create a comprehensive program in a new way so that parents are getting what they need as well as the kids getting what they need." Right? So that it's a two-way street. And, I admire that. And had they not asked them, had they not said to them, what's working for you and what's not, they would have never known that. And so they're going to be launching on March 1st. They've been gathering input, they've been sharing, they've been getting that feedback back and forth, and they've now got their teachers all on board for it, their staff is all on board, and they're going to be able to offer a far more viable parent or program for parents and families than they've been doing in the past. So I think that parent feedback, just ask the question, listen to the answers, and then decide if there's something you can do about it or not, and then move forward.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's everything. Feedback's everything, right? And so, again, as you're trying to create a culture of excellence, we're gonna encourage it. We're gonna ask for it because at first people don't really want to say much, but
Right.
you keep asking, and that's how we would break it down. What do you like? What do you dislike? Or what are the challenges? And then what are you undecided about? And then we had a system with that. So then great. How are we going to celebrate the likes, right? How's the kid going to celebrate? How's the parent going to celebrate? How are we going to celebrate as the staff? And then on dislikes, we would pivot or adjust. And then on anything else that would be primarily undecided, we would start questioning it until we push it to a like or a dislike. So I agree with that 100%. Secondarily, what she was saying is takes a village, right? And we don't have that mentality like we should anymore. It takes a village to be able to raise these kids with everything that they're dealing with from A to Z. So if we're not getting that 360-degree input and feedback in this case, then how are we going to know? Because my brain only goes so far. And but you bring somebody else's brain and they want to talk about this, and somebody else wants to talk about this, somebody else wants to talk about this, and we put that into a blender, and we call that an amazing smoothie, so to speak. So we're always saying, and then with the people that are getting the feedback, if they get a little bit like, well, I can't believe that parent said that. I'm like, what are you hearing? Are you hearing who you are is not okay, or what you did? Because I think they're saying what you did may not be okay, and you don't even have to agree with it, but you have to listen to it. So we have a policy to where if we get negative feedback, you know what we say? Thank you, whether we agree or not. Thank you, because that time it may not matter, but the next time they could have the only answer in the room. So we encourage that at a regular basis. Speak your mind. Do what you have to be able to do, so to speak. And I think
Talk
that
straight.
7 o'clock. We just got this streambo. They're bombing our chat.
All right. Well, then it's about time for us to leave. So thank you to everybody who came, and we appreciate your questions. And thanks to Robert for fielding those. And thanks to Brett for all his contribution. And for me, I'm going to sign off.